Hello and welcome to I Know That Voice, the podcast about voice actors and voice acting. I'm Keith Wickham, I'm a voice actor, have been for 30 years. You'll know me best probably as Sir Topham Hatt from Thomas and Friends, as well as Gordon, Henry, Edward and various other engines in the show.
Gonna get on with it, Keith.
I'm also Professor Inkling and Shellington in the Octonauts, and I was a koala brother, I was Cornel and Watch My Chops, I was in 64 Zoo Lane. I was also Change Daily in The Secret Show.
Show isn't about you.
I thought it'd be nice to talk to my fellow voice artists about their profession. These are people whose voices you will know, but who could still go to the supermarket without being mobbed. Today I'm talking to a man whose voice you will certainly know. He's a fellow Octonaut, but he's also a Meerkat. He's also a very well-known Geordie character from Alan Partridge. He's written for Mel Smith, Griff Rhys-Jones, Harry Enfield, and Michael Barrymore, among many others. He is, of course, the multi-talented and very funny Simon Greenall.
I think we've got enough there.
So I'm here talking to Simon Greenall, man of many voices, and I'm going to start by going over your career basically from the beginning in a small, not a detailed CV.
God, this is like Restart. It's like a Restart interview. When did you last not work? Today. Where are you from? Where are you from?
Yes.
Where are you from? I'm from the Scottish borders. I was born in a place called Longtown, because it is a long town. Mile and a half inside the border, inside the English side. I didn't have a very good time at school, and kind of towards the end deliberately didn't do very well and didn't care.
Okay.
And then ended up working for my dad. He had an agricultural repair business, and he gave me the hardest, dirtiest, dangerousest jobs in order to make me buck my ideas up, which it kind of did. So then I left working for him because I had a very good chance of losing my fingers.
Was that deliberate on his part?
Yeah, kind of. I ended up doing tractor repairs in fields in the winter. I then had a series of different jobs, mostly in the sort of the building industry. I worked in a builder's merchants. I worked in a big DIY store. Then I got a job as a wines and spirits salesman for Bulmers. What I didn't realise was how much the customers just hate salesmen, absolutely hate them. And you just walk through the door and they would instantly hate you. But it then prepared me for comedy. I mean, I was used to people hating me on the spot.
Yes, so. And there not being many people in front of you.
Again, I sort of lost my way and didn't really know what I wanted or what I wanted to do.
So there was no vocational thing about the acting thing? It was just, or was it at the back of your head?
Weirdly, I had been a child actor at the Edinburgh Festival in a production by Manchester Polytechnic School of Theatre, doing Macbeth, don't say it, and lots of other shows. My sister, who was at the Poly at the time, was making the costumes, and they hadn't got anybody for the child's part in Macbeth. And my sister said, "Oh, my brother will do it. He likes showing off." So I did it, and the students in the cast were Matthew Kelly, Bernard Hill, George Costigan, Elizabeth Estenson, Tom Hanks. Spot which one's not true. So that gave me a sort of a taste of it, or an idea of it. But the senior school that I went to, there was no drama outlet or anything like that at all.
Okay.
So it sort of laid as a kind of dormant idea. So I make a hash of the salesman's job, and then I decide to just
make a hash of being an actor.
then I decided I'm just going to wander and see what happens. So I got an Interrail ticket and set off. Got to Athens a month later, and was then going to do island hopping and work in bars and sell windsurfers and that sort of stuff. Yeah. But I got on the wrong ferry. I got the ferry to Crete, which I didn't realise was nowhere near the other islands.
Okay.
And I'd completely run out of money. So I ended up living in a cave on Crete. Actually, a cave where New Zealand and Australian soldiers had been sort of hiding out in the war because they had their graffiti on the walls. So I lived in this cave for a bit. And then somebody said, if you go to Israel, you can work on a kibbutz and get money. I thought, that's right, I'll do that. Yeah. So I had enough money to go from Heraklion to Haifa in those days on the ferry, sleeping on the deck, arrived in Israel, you could go to an office in those days and get sent to a kibbutz. Then realised that the pay was £15 a month. So it was going to take me a long time to make my airfare back, which it did. On the kibbutz, we did all kinds of things. We picked oranges, avocados, pomelos, grapefruit, stuff like that. And I got a job as a root stock grafter. So you got an orchard of orange trees. You can then chop those down, but if you leave the root stock, the stump, you can then graft into the stump other citrus.
Right.
So I got a job I got quite good at doing that. And then I came back and applied to drama school, but of course the only drama school I'd ever heard of was Manchester Polytechnic. So I applied there, and
You'd never heard of RADA or any of those?
By going to auditions, I started to hear of these other drama schools. I thought, oh right, there's other drama schools. Looking back now, I was utterly naive. I think got in because I charmed them for one.
That I don't believe.
And anybody who knows me finds that bit really hard to believe. But if I'm really pushed, I can be. And I was a mature student, and I was coming with a grant. So I was
that would have.
Yeah. So they more or less said, if you want to come, but try not to get in the way. And then the second I arrived, I put on reviews and sketch evenings and stuff like that, and kept the proceeds. I also ran front of house and kept the proceeds.
Started early.
Yeah, started early.
Yes.
I will be honest, I was always more avaricious than ambitious. The wardrobe woman was always very kind to me. She's really nice. And she said, what do you really want to do? I said, I just want to make a load of money. I said, well, you're not going to make it in acting, are you? I thought, but all actors are really rich. She said, no, most actors are poor. I said, no, that's not right. At drama school, we had to do odd jobs like stage management and stuff like that, which I hated and refused to do.
Yes.
But I would work for her. So she said, oh, you can do the show washing if you want. I thought, I can do that. I would quite fancy that, because I can get my own stuff washed with it. But I put my denim jacket in with the wash.
Oh.
And it was a production of The Three Sisters, and they all had light blue blouses. But the lace didn't take the colour, so they had light blue blouses with white, and people were going, I'm sure that's periodically accurate.
Very good. Yes.
As you will see from this interview, there's a recurring theme of me getting into trouble. I got into so much trouble at drama school. I was in the refectory as this notice went up, and it said extras wanted for the Royal Ballet tour. So I read the notice, ripped it down, stuffed it in my pocket.
So no one else could get it.
Someone else was going to get it. Went to my mate and said, look, they want extras in the ballet. He said, we can't dance. I said, oh, I'm sure they wouldn't be asking us if you had to dance. I'm sure it's other stuff you have to do. I said, plus, there's loads of ballerinas, and I'm sure they're going to want to go with us because they'll just be surrounded by gay men. So he went, oh, all right then. So it was me, him, and another guy who I persuaded to go. I think we got £60 a week. Oh. I was in Giselle, Sleeping Beauty, and something else. In Giselle, we had to be extras at the back. So I was the woodcutter, so I had a big bundle of sticks on my back. And my mate was the blacksmith. He had a hammer that he hadn't to hit the anvil with in time to the music.
Right.
So we had to sway to the music. And what happens is the girls from the village come on, do a dance in a circle, and then they break and get the boys from the village and pull them into the centre and do another dance with them. So the first night, the girls come on, do a circle dance. We're all doing, a woodcutter acting in the background, blacksmith acting in the background. They break and they come and they grab me and my mate and start pulling us towards the middle of the stage. And I'm a woodcutter. Oh, God, no. My mate's got a hammer. If the worst comes to the worst, he's just going to knock her out with the hammer. They drag us to nearly the centre of the stage, and then they shake their hands in our faces and go, oh no, we made a mistake. It's the boys we're after. And apparently they do it to all the extras every first night.
Right.
Every town they go.
Right. Okay.
And as for us getting off with any of the dancers, not a hope. No, we were like ugly northern cart horses. to their beautiful, graceful show ponies.
Oh, that's a very...
I tell you what, they smoked even heavier than us.
Oh, yes, dancers were known for that.
They used to come off and have a fag in the wings.
Yeah, keeps the weight down. That was the idea.
And their chests would be heaving.
Yeah.
And they'd down 3 Silk Cut Ultra in about 4 seconds.
Blimey. Did you catch any?
Well, we got a lot of stumps. There's a lot of half-finished fags in the wings. We're like, ooh, we'll have them.
Anything happened to drama school? Did you move on from there directly? Did you get
I had a
pulled out?
very lucky break at drama school. There was the casting director of the Royal Exchange, Sophie Marshall, liked me. God knows why. I might have sold her something. She gave me an audition for The Merchant of Venice. The director did. He said he didn't like me. Somebody else was going to do it, and then he backed out. So I was a last-minute emergency replacement. And I did a really good job. I worked really hard, and because we hadn't really done a lot of Shakespeare at college, we hadn't done any really. Luckily, the other guy that I was playing with, he'd been to RADA, so he was like properly trained and well trained, and he kind of coached me through it and how to do it and stuff. But that director at the end, he wrote everybody a lovely card. And on mine he put, "You've done some good work." And my mate put in brackets, "I don't know where." It was just one of those like, oh, what can I possibly say about this boy I hate?
But that was that a break? Did that give you more work?
I thought it would, but it didn't.
Okay.
It didn't.
Okay. Did they give you an equity card though? Because you needed one then.
No, I had one already. I had an equity card already through Variety.
Oh, of course.
I'd done round the clubs and pubs around Manchester, getting booed off. Horrible, ghastly places.
Because I've got to point this out every time that to listeners that Equity was a closed shop.
Oh yeah,
and you had to have a card to work.
And was a looking back on it now, and from what other people have said who went to drama schools down south and didn't go into Equity via that Variety route or didn't know that wrinkle. They were kind of not ostracised, but unable to. They just couldn't work. Unable to do what they wanted for years.
Yes,
years.
It was an odd system, wasn't it?
Theatre. It was, and of course, unions are the right thing and the good thing, and they've done so much. But there are instances where it's old practices. Old practices were harmful in a lot of ways.
And you also at college you met various people, didn't you?
Steve Coogan was the most famous person.
Yeah.
He was a first year when I was a third year.
Right.
But we used to sit in on auditions, and I remember him auditioning. I don't think he did a dramatic piece. I think he more or less did a stand-up act and did some impressions. But Manchester Poly was such a strange school that it was a real kind of odd mixture of odd people.
And a lot of people came out of there, didn't they? That went into
it was sort of the northern school, but by the time I went, it was in a serious decline, and the tutors didn't care.
Is that why you got in?
That's why I got in.
Okay, move on. So from that play, from there, did you do a lot of theatre?
From there I came to London. I had a girlfriend who lived in London. With a flat. I was always very attracted to girls with property.
Yeah.
So I came to London and lived in her flat,
right.
and rocketed to obscurity.
Yeah.
It was just really difficult.
Yeah.
We didn't know London at all. We were from Manchester, and I just assumed that was going to work up north. I thought, I'll work up north in the northern theatres and Granada and stuff like that. But that didn't happen either. I got a job in a sitcom called Life Without George.
Okay.
Directed by Susie Bell, been written by David Croft's daughter.
Right.
Wrote it. and I was in an episode of that as a policeman. And I thought that was going to be the start, but it wasn't. What actually got me started was that I wrote comedy. I wrote sketches. I had a little radio show, student radio thing for BBC Manchester, and we wrote sketches for that. And I just found that I could write sketches, or I could write funny stuff. And Steve Coogan used this in his act until very, very late. I once wrote a thing about the Americans bombing Trumpton. Because Trumpton had refused a McDonald's, and he used that in his act, and people used to shout out Trumpton, Trumpton, and he'd do it. It was a news reporter. It was it might have been Brian Hanrahan.
Yes.
So writing was how I really got started, because the chap that I'd been at the Royal Exchange with, he had a commission. He'd been part of a group called the Jockeys of Norfolk, which was Chris Lang, Andy Taylor, and Hugh Grant. And they had a commission from Mel and Griff to write sketches.
Okay.
But Hugh Grant, he'd caught fame overnight and gone. So it was kind of me and Chris started writing sketches for TV. Starting with Mel and Griff. If they didn't buy it, we'd sell it to Hale and Pace. And stuff like that. Saying if Mel and Griff didn't buy it, then Hale and Pace would get it. I once sold a sketch to Hale and Pace that I thought Mel and Griff had turned down. I thought they'd rejected it, because they used to have a board. They had a big board with all these post-it notes with the title of your sketch on in show order. So there'd be, and this sketch called Music Shop disappeared off the board. So I thought, they're not doing it now, which was very Griff. It's like, no, I don't think that's an idea anymore. I did find exchange and changed Mel to Hale and Griff to Pace and sold it to Hale and Pace. And it was only because a carpenter was building the set at LWT for the Music Shop. And he said, do you know what? About a fortnight ago, I was building this more or less the same set, for Mel and Griff in a sketch called The Music Shop. And I got a phone call at home from the producer saying, have you sold this sketch? And I had to admit it and say, yeah. But then what I did do was Chris and I got work at LWT on light entertainment shows, which we didn't know had writers. Who knew? So they said, would you like to come and write for Matthew Kelly, coincidentally, on a thing called You Bet, which had been Bruce Forsyth. And that was a great job. Yeah. Brilliant. I think we did, 2 shows a night on 2 nights, but we got paid for each show. So we were working 2 days a week, starting at 8:30 in the morning and having written all 4 shows by about 11.
Wow.
And then just sat with our feet up. We had to interview the guests and stuff like that. And then I wrote for Michael Barrymore when he was funny. In the very early incarnations of the Barrymore show, it was quite well respected. It was quite he was interviewed in The Guardian and stuff because of the show, and it sort of went off the rails after that. He did some seriously strange things, but because he would more or less become John Cleese.
Yeah, that's right.
In Fawlty Towers,
that's right.
And throw people out, and he had that sort of kind of the same physicality and stuff. But he also, like a lot of those comedians, he wanted to be a song and dance man. He wanted to be a showman, and it wasn't his strong suit. The other thing that he did was he would, like a lot of comedians do, he would run to home. I'd write something for him for the opening of the show and made it fairly clear with room for freedom around it. And he would sort of start it and then just lose confidence and just go and grab a granny out the audience.
Right.
And I'll just rip the script out. Okay, that's the end of that. Yeah. There's no point.
Okay. And that went on for a while, that?
That went on for years. You Bet and the Barrymore show overlapped. This was also at the beginning of independent productions on TV. Because I used to work for a company called Action Time. Okay. Action Time did lots of daytime quiz shows, so I did that. And then I worked for Mentorn. I used to write a show called Cuisine with Chris Kelly from Screen Test.
Simon means clapperboard. Screen Test was Michael Rodd on the BBC. Chris Kelly was on ITV. I'll stop doing this now.
Who was actually a real foodie. So he had a restaurant in Cambridge, which was the bane of his life. Right. I think I did 104 shows.
Right.
I had to write a food-related, pun-filled opening to every show. My proudest moment was, hello and welcome to Cuisine. So once more unto the fridge, dear friends, once more, or build up the walls with our English bread. I punched the air and ran round the room with that. Chris Kelly just went, It was taking me hours. There was all kinds of sausage jokes and anything vaguely safely titivating was what they were after.
And that led to more.
None of these things led to anything. I don't know what you're leading to. Half an hour in and still nothing's happened. So I'm doing lots of this stuff. I've got 2 children at private school, which is killing me.
You are making money, but it's not in acting, is it?
It's not in acting, not at all. Because we worked for Mel and Griff, who had a production company, we used to write radio commercials.
Yes.
And I always used to think, well, I could do that. I could do that better than him. So slowly, I started to get the chance to do bits in radio commercials myself, and clawed my way up from that. I wrote my own voice tape. I worked on it, and had a really good engineer. Your voice tape is your audition piece every time. Yeah. Get it right, and get it good, because that's going to go out and work for you. And it did, and I started to get more and more and more. I got an agent from that. I got an agent, which was a big. I got ad voice, which is a big
That's
change.
huge.
I thought, oh wow, this is it. I'm away. And I was to an extent. I was doing okay. 2 or 3 radio ads a day or a week or whatever. Still writing entertainment TV and anything I could lay my hands on. Then I did stand up. I thought I had this feeling. I had this idea that I couldn't criticize comedy or judge comedy unless I'd had a go myself.
Very good.
I can't think what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do stand-up. And I used to do a Dutch accent. I used to love doing this Dutch accent. I invented this Dutch showman. This is so corny. He was called Dick Van Dyke, the second funniest man in Holland. Yeah. So that was my act. And it was just sheer out-and-out bravery. And I went and did lots of tryouts. And I actually never got booed off. Sometimes it was a bit lukewarm because I didn't quite understand it.
Yes.
Because it was just a bit too weird. And I learned quickly. I thought, and I enjoyed it, actually.
But you were also writing for Harry Enfield at that time, I remember, weren't you?
Yeah, I'd started writing for Harry Enfield. I was writing for Harry. That was through a really good producer called Harry Thompson.
Oh, he was great, yes.
And Harry Thompson was another very, very influential and fortuitous person in my life. Because I was sort of working with Chris Lang and all that sort of mob, they kind of looked down on me a bit because I'd been to Manchester Poly and I wasn't that experienced. But Harry Thompson just knew that I could do lots of voices. And he would cast me in things and go, oh, Simon, you just do this. Simon, do this. Simon, can you do that? Do this. He didn't care where I'd come from, what I'd done, whether I had or hadn't been to Cambridge, had or hadn't been to RADA. He just knew that I was this machine that he could say voice 7 and it would come out. So he used me a lot, and I learnt a lot from the stuff that Harry put me in. He got me writing for Harry and Paul, and then he got me little bits of acting in it as well. I was acting in Armstrong and Miller because that had come from stand-up, because when I was doing stand-up, I met Matt Lucas and David Walliams because they were on the stand-up circuit as well, and I was doing stuff with them because they had a little kind of weird TV show in all those sort of fringe channels that were popping up everywhere. So I was doing stuff with them. So I was sort of getting a little bit of recognition, getting a little bit known. And then I had an audition for I'm Alan Partridge, which we were told was a new Alan Partridge series. Alan isn't doing the chat show anymore. He now lives in a hotel and has got a radio show, and he's sort of a bit, not down and out, but down on his luck. Typical. Now that I know Amanda, this is so typical of him. Just this bone idle laziness. Slapdash. He said, the character's called Michael. We decided he's called Michael, and he works in the hotel, and he gets on with Alan. He's the only one who sort of gets on with Alan. And then there was this silence. I thought, and you're going to turn the page or something? What's? That's it. So you had a little bit of time to think. because I knew Steve Coogan, I thought, actually, he'll like the army stuff. I'll make him an ex-soldier. And I had worked with a lot of ex-soldiers as well in the building trade. So I sort of knew what they were
It's amazing
like
what feeds into stuff, isn't it? You don't know is there.
Yes, what the stuff you've stuck in your head that will come later in life. It'll come on. I was going to make it from Yorkshire, a big bastard from Yorkshire. What had been in army, but that morning of the audition, I used to have a regular thing for a TV chart show again on one of these fringe stations that
There
were all
loads of them,
the
weren't there?
rage at the time. It was from a dog's point of view, and the dog was called Sniffer, and he was Geordie, and he had to sniff around all around the TV station, and then eventually he sniffed out that day's guest, and the camera panned up, and it revealed who it was. Pat Sharp, usually. So I sniff at the dog. Oh, who is it? Don't know. Oh, look, it's him. So I used to do that, and so I thought, I'll make him Geordie. So I did the audition, and Michael spoke like that. He's quite, intelligible. But it was Amando's idea to make him completely unintelligible. And Coogan told me later that when they were watching the audition tapes back, Coogan didn't know who was going to come up on the tape. And then suddenly I come up on the tape. Coogan doesn't say anything. He doesn't say, I was at drama school with him, and we used to have a little radio show together. He doesn't say any of that. He just lets it run, and I do my audition bit, talking about making breakfasts and people ruining breakfast by eating it. You put all the breakfast on, all the sausages and the bacon, and it all looks lovely, and the thing with the lid and the baked beans in, and folk just come along and and they drop it everywhere to make a right mess of it, man. So that was more or less the audition. And Coogan didn't say anything. He didn't say, I know him. And Amanda said, I quite like this guy, this sort of Geordie guy, and I've got an idea for him. And that's when Coogan said, actually, I know him. I know. Okay. I was at drama school with him, and he's all right. He's good. So that's what got me that job. And that was the change. At last, something's happened. At last,
real
something's happened. Hey, imagine how I felt. 30 years later. This is about 7-10 years after drama school.
Yeah.
So 10 years, not in the wilderness, but wondering if it's gonna. We didn't know. I'm Alan Partridge was funny. We hadn't got a clue. The process was just a slog. It's just an endless slog because it was all improvised. It's devised, improvised, which again is just Amando being lazy. Right. So I think what happens is that Alan's coming in his car, and he comes to the hotel, and you come up to him, and you say something to him, and then he goes off, and he goes to reception. What? So we used to improvise like that, but it was a good core team. Barbara Durkin, the head receptionist, the sort of pretty brittle one, she was in my year at drama school.
Okay.
And she hated it. She absolutely hated it. Hated improvising. Hated the fact that there was no script and no ideas and no clue. And she at the time was doing a show called Roger Roger about a cab company, and she said Roger Roger was like way funnier than this rubbish we're doing now. And she used to say out loud,
"Oh God,
don't, Barbara, don't." And she said, "This is awful." But more or less, she was more or less private phrasing going, "We're doomed."
Yes.
There's no audience, and when we'd rehearsed and hammered away at it and improvised and got nowhere, and then tried something else and done something, and we'd be rehearsing right until like 9 o'clock at night, just hammering away at a scene that just wasn't working or didn't work, and Coogan would change it, and they'd all change it, and then they'd come back and they'd go, "No, we've changed it, we don't think that works anymore." So the first Friday lunchtime, we had a show. We had the first show more or less together, although nothing was written down. But we all knew what we were going to do and more or less what we were going to say. And Peter Bainham was brilliant as well. Peter Bainham would just hand you the funniest thing written on a piece of paper, and for you to say, and you just say, "Oh, brilliant! I've got this. So we do the tech run for cameras, lights, wardrobe, all the other departments, sound. They all come and they have to see the show in order to then record it. And they laughed. And apparently, normally, they're like Easter Island statues. They've seen it all before. It's like never go to a screening with the animators. They don't find it funny at all. They were laughing, and we thought,
got something.
Oh, right. Oh, maybe. And then the first night we did a recording, it was just like, wow, this is it. We're away. That first recording, It was just a few sort of friends in the green room. The next week, it's like everybody was in there. Like the head of the BBC was in there. All the comedians were in there. It was like, wow.
It was a great series.
Amazing. It was appointment TV.
Yes, it was.
It was very rare. I know people say you don't know your luck or you don't recognise it, but I did recognise that this was the moment. This was it. This was something.
But that thing, the audition, feeds back to something you told me once about. Somebody said, one of your drama tutors or somebody said, always bring an idea. So you go into the room to an audition.
Yes, yeah. never turn up empty-handed. Know your lines. Yeah, bring something with it and have an idea. Yeah, so I could always have ideas because I find it really difficult to learn lines because I've come from that world of radio ads and improvisation. I find it really, really hard to learn a script and then stick to it because I often think I thought of something better, which you can't do in Shakespeare apparently. They get a bit arsey with you.
Because impro isn't everybody's cup of tea.
Well, when we used to do I'm on Partridge, we'd have guest actors come in who were just absolutely terrified. Yeah. Just like, what? Yeah. No words. Because we had an actress come in and she had this big long piece that they'd written that she had to say during this party where Partridge sees it's her and then makes his way around the room, not trying to avoid people to get to her. So she had to say this thing, and she made such a fuss about learning it and going to everybody, for sympathy and not getting much. And then Amanda eventually said to her, look, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you say. You can say anything. The camera's not on you. We're following Alan until he gets to you. And her face was thunder. She was like, I've learned it. It doesn't matter. You could just recite the phone book. It doesn't matter.
But I would argue, and this is one of the things doing the show, is that didn't make your household face, did it?
No.
You could still walk down the street.
No.
And not be recognised. And so you're then doing a lot of voiceovers.
And then doing a lot of voiceovers. It's difficult to explain to people, but you'll know this. It's like being a virtuoso on an instrument. You can do it. You can do all those things. You can just switch and change and play and go high. And because I've taught a few times, I always say, right, can anybody play an instrument? Then they can. I said, well, actually, you can all play the greatest instrument in the world. Yes. It's your voice, and you must play with it. You must try and do different things. Change the shape of your mouth. Change and dare to do stupid stuff. And what I like about the work that we do in animation and in advertising is that there are no bad ideas. You're allowed to crash and burn and have a dumb idea or start off with a ridiculous voice. And there's no judgment and there's no consequences of that, except that it'll lead you to something
leads
brilliant.
You to something else.
It'll lead you to something good. And I like that creative forum. I also like advertising because they have nothing to do with the hierarchy of the theatre or television, and they don't care who's high status, low status. They don't care as long as you can get it done in 8 seconds and hit the right emphasis and mention the product twice. I did a sort of rude French version of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and it was sort of sex thing, animation, and it was me and Rick Mail playing the dwarfs. The producer was a guy called Micheal, who's a famous French animator, and he just kept going, no, Simon, you do. Not Rick, no, Rick, stop. Simon, you do. And Rick Mail was getting really cross, getting really angry. And you could see that he wanted to say, he's nobody. He's no one. You can't say that to me. And then Rick Mail, he didn't come back after lunch.
Oh.
And Pisha went, okay, no mind, don't matter, goodbye. Okay, Simon, again, you do. Okay. And I like that. I like that. You come from ground zero. You don't come from any kind of elevated position. Yeah.
You did Monkey Dust, didn't you?
Yeah, Monkey Dust, because that was Harry Thompson. And Harry Thompson would push you. He'd go, no, I think you can do a better one. I think you can do something different. Do something more. Because I did I'm Ivan Dubsky, the meat safe murderer, only I never done it. Of course, it's based on, there was a guy in the Northeast who was wrongly convicted for years. And we were talking about it, and I said, well, you know, they tend to have quite a sort of like a childish voice like that, you know, because they're not properly, you know, fully developed or whatever. And Harry went, yeah, right, okay, let's roughen it a bit and do that. And he tweaked and tweaked and tweaked and tweaked, but Harry would just have you more or less on the verge of tears, but at the end, you think, oh God, he was right. That was, and we did. I thought Monkey Dust was great, and I kind of a wee bit ahead of its time in a lot of ways.
It was very surreal.
Oh, very surreal, and we were doing stuff about Iraq and jihad and really edgy stuff. You wouldn't do it now. You wouldn't dare.
And we did the Mr. Men.
Yay! Mr. Men was good. The Mr. Men was a hard school. It was hard. We did a lot of shows in a day, and it's that thing where you're with people who are not going to break or bend. They're just going to get on with it and do it. And you think, oh, this is great. We're all at the top of our game. We're all good. There's nobody asking what's my motivation or does that or needing reassurance. I've never been able to have much sympathy for actors who need reassurance.
The Octonauts is the big one we've done. You and I worked on for 12 years.
Attention, calling all Octonauts. This is Captain Barnacles. And people used to go, oh, what? So you're Captain Barnacles? Hang on, it's not that far away from me, boys.
And I remember it started off Northern. Do you remember?
He was going to be a kind of Sean Bean hero-y character.
Right.
But another brilliant producer, Dave Peacock, who sort of realised it wasn't going to work and put me out of his misery.
Yes, yes. But that was a classic of its kind because of the job was working in the same room.
Yeah, well, we had a brilliant time.
Yes. And
we just laughed like drains.
Yeah.
And got a nice free lunch.
Which was usually sushi. So we were eating the cast, you know.
But that was a joyous job.
It was, and they don't come along very often, and they don't last that long either. Because most cartoons are lucky if they get one recommission.
Oh, and it had lots of different incarnations. There was stage shows and all sorts of things.
Yes,
toys.
Every time they brought toys in, you said, "Do they talk?" That was your.
I'm like Santa.
Yeah, only a reverse Santa.
Some friends of my wife's, they said, we saw a huge Meerkat poster just outside Clapham Junction Station. Whoa, that's good, isn't it? A huge poster. And I said, yeah, did it talk as you walked past? Then I don't get anything, do I? Unless it said hello in the Meerkat's voice, I don't get a penny. Idiot.
And you have led me on to that because that's the other
that
one. Yes, that's the main one, isn't it?
That's the one. That's the one. It's the two because it's Aleksandr and Sergei. And then,
hang on, how long have this been going on now altogether? About 15 years?
Yeah, 15 years, I think. 16 years.
That's extraordinary.
Yeah, which, and again, ad campaigns don't last that long.
What about your idea when the original audition for the Meerkats? That was yeah.
Because when I first went for it, a lot of people had been up for it, and they had Russians and all sorts of people up for it. They couldn't sort of decide what they wanted.
Well, it's a tough one, isn't it? What would he
do? What would he be like? Eventually, my agent got me in. She begged them. I had actually done a Russian character for that agency for Texaco. I'd done a Siberian tiger. But he was very like that. He was very laid back and very loose, sort of like Shere Khan, but the Russian, you know. So I went in, and then they showed me drawings of sort of like a Terry Thomas idea and the elegant idea and the cravat idea. And they said, oh, you know, he's a hard-nosed, tough, super successul oligarch businessman, a bit like sort of like a Russian Alan Sugar. So he's like a strong voice like this, blah, blah, blah. And I went, nah, you don't want that. That's no. That's bonkers. What are you thinking of? Who thought of that? No, what you want this. It's just arrogant. Now when I think about it, I feel sick.
Yeah.
I feel sick thinking how easily they could have just gone, all right, yeah, thanks, bye.
Yes.
But they let me do my idea. The animators from Passion Pictures were there, and they liked that I was moving like a meerkat. I was sort of twitching.
Actually, physically.
Twitching, bringing physicality, which we do. We bring a physicality to it, which just bizarrely adds to the voice. It gives something to the voice.
It is bizarre. I've always found that.
Yeah, and the animators said, "Oh, look, we like him because he's doing all that." And I did the squeak off off the top of my head. Because remember in the Octonauts, I used to do the dolphin.
Dolphins, yes. Yep.
I'm not doing that with my mouth for anybody who's listening. So I did the squeak and stuff. So yeah, and then even when that started, we didn't know. I'd gone to Buenos Aires on holiday and got a phone call in the middle of the night saying, "Can you get to a recording studio in Buenos Aires?" Why? He said, "The Meerkats." I said, "Oh, that insurance rat thing that I did before Christmas." Yes, it's gone mad. It's gone absolutely mad. And they hadn't got enough content, so I had to record content in Buenos Aires. Wow. And that was the first kind of inkling. They're like, "Oh, do you know this might be a thing?" You don't know. You absolutely don't know.
Never know.
You don't know. And also, often things you think are going to be a big hit, it's like just disappear.
Yeah, you can't make it. You can't make it work.
You can't make it.
It's the public like it or they don't.
Yeah. So we started the campaign. It was Aleksandr on his own doing stuff. They wanted to have an IT department because Compare the Market is online and they have somebody who works in the IT department. So they came up with this character called Sergei, who was a bit of a nerd, a bit of a geek. And they said, "So can you just do a quick voice for Sergei? Because he needs to say computer not working." So we tried different things like computer not working and stuff. And I thought, and actually this is based on somebody that I used to know
who did speak like that. He was Polish and he spoke like that. It was very boring. So
they said, "Oh yeah, that's fun. So the advert goes out.
Computer not working.
I never thought any more of it, and then about 2 months later, we get the scripts through. I said, "Oh, that's the computer. It's always got loads of words here." I said, "Yeah, well." It's tested really well, and also the people at Compare the Market, who are nerds, they really like him. He's their hero.
Right.
So that was that.
Right.
So
You've
then
given a voice to the nerds.
So I've now got a voice that kills me.
Yeah, it must do.
Turn the back. It really does you.
So then Sergei arrives, and then they became a traditional Laurel and Hardy, Morecambe and Wise double act. You can do so much with double acts, and because you're forever changing the dynamic of who's up, who's down. Whenever Sergei gets revenge on Aleksandr, it's hilarious, and Aleksandr never quite understands, and Sergei does understand it. You can do all those things. We used to do a Christmas thing, and we'd done the Christmas thing. In a session, I said, "You know what they should do? How about this? They come out of the mansion, there's a wicker basket on the doorstep, and in it is a baby. It's 2 men and a baby." And they weren't listening. They weren't, because I come up with a lot of ideas. And I was a victim of my many ideas. And I said, I think it'll be funny. They went, "Yeah, okay, thanks, Simon. We're done, actually." I was going, anyway, I wrote it out as a commercial and sent it to them. And they didn't really say anything. But then about 6 months later, we're into meets baby on doorstep. Fortunately, I had the nous to not say, "This is mine." I thought, there's nothing to be gained here by me saying this is mine. Doesn't matter. I can happily sit there in the glow of knowing that I thought of this, but there's nothing for me going, "Hey, I thought of this, everyone." And again, like I said before, there are no bad ideas. You don't get put down or scowled at or looked down on for dumb ideas, because a dumb idea can be a good idea.
And it brings me quite neatly onto the meat of the topic in this podcast generally, is the audience and how it's changed and how the industry has changed.
Oh, the big bogey thing is AI. AI is waiting in the wings to annihilate us or make us redundant overnight. And what I think with AI is that it's intriguing and fascinating and quite an interesting thing until it arrives in your industry. No, there's nothing wrong with it replacing contracts and legal work. No, but it can't do my job.
Yeah.
And it can do so many jobs. Yeah. The new Mission Impossible movie, the main baddie is AI.
Really?
Yeah, it's a thing called the Entity. Sorry, the Equity.
Yeah, the Equity.
Sorry, Equity. Equity is the actors' union. It's called the Entity. That's right. It's called the Entity, and the Entity is the thing that's going to destroy the world.
Well, this was prefigured by Terminator. I mean, basically the Terminator movies.
Yes, that's
saw this coming.
Technology coming back to kill us.
Yes, it took over the world.
Because we eventually are inconvenient for technology.
Yeah.
We're in the way.
I heard it described quite well by somebody in a documentary. They said in the way that we have pets, that we like dogs. We don't want to be cruel to them or anything, and you feed them and you have a nice time with them. But if you want to build a bypass, you don't ask the dogs.
No.
And the technology is going to get to the point with us where we're nice playthings. But if it wants to do something, it will do it.
Ooh.
And that's how it was described. Bill Gates was saying that the only jobs that are safe are basically coders and people who work in power stations, because we need electricity for all this, and electricity is the weak point. It's where you need human oversight. The interesting thing about doing this show is the different viewpoints you get from people and the different ways they're using it.
Oh, really?
And how they're adapting, and how it varies the fear that people have of it. And then there's the acceptance, which you must know. I mean, everything changes. Nothing stays the same.
And otherwise we're Luddites and we're trying to smash the machine with a wooden stick.
Yes. But there isn't much we can do about it. And the only thing you can do is adapt the way you work, I guess, or do something else. So are you going to try and adapt and do something else? Or are you going to just accept what's going on, or what's the...
How can I rail against it? What can I do? I don't know. I'm a bit lost at the moment as to what I'm going to do with my time.
I mean, I've said to this, and other people have said this that I've interviewed, that we've lived through a great period of this.
I wouldn't want to be starting.
Exactly what I was going to say. Yes.
No.
Yes.
No, we've boarded the gravy train just as it's coming off the viaduct, and heading towards the rover's return.
Yeah. It's yes, and it is a bit shocking. It's happened very swiftly too. It's been
very swiftly.
Yes, it's been bubbling away for a bit.
Yeah,
and you've seen it sort of happening and whatever. Do you remember the built by robots advert?
Yeah, driven by Italians.
Yeah,
that was the Melon Griffs. There was a 9 o'clock news sketch. Because Rory Stewart was saying, I like his thing. Him and the grumpy northern one. He was talking to a British diplomat who'd been to some city in China bigger than London that you've never heard of, but they've built a port 40 kilometres off the coast with reclaimed land or whatever. And he said this 4th biggest container port in the world, the diplomat went there and saw 2 human beings. One who opened the gate when he went in, and the other one who closed the gate when he went out. And everything else was robots.
Yeah.
But are we doing what our parents were doing?
Yep.
Going, it's all television, and are we being them?
It's exactly what I've been saying. You've got to be very careful not to be that.
To say, well, change is inevitable.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that, Simon. I'm trying to think of a nice way of ending it up.
Good. Good fun. Yeah. Well, don't make it complicated. Keep it simples.
Oh, very clever.
That's why I get the medium-sized money.